My parents gifted us a car on our wedding day, a brand new metallic gray crossover, exactly the model Ethan once stared at wistfully through the dealership window months ago. He never asked for it, but my parents saw the way his eyes lit up, and they wanted to give him something more than just their blessing. They wanted to give him something that said, "You're one of us now." The plan was perfect. The car would arrive right after the reception speeches. The valet would roll it out with a satin bow, and the MC would make the announcement. It was supposed to be a highlight of the night, something symbolic, generous, unforgettable. But the car didn't arrive. Everything else went beautifully. I walked down the aisle on my father's arm, trembling with nerves and joy. Ethan stood there, looking at me like I was his entire world. We said our vows under a canopy of soft lights and fresh blooms, surrounded by people who mattered most to us. My mother cried. My father didn't, but his lips trembled. We took photos, danced, cut the cake. Toasts were made, glasses clinked. And then the MC picked up the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we wrap up the formal program, the bride's parents have one last surprise for the newlyweds. Ethan and Claire, this one's for you. Your first car together, a token of support as you begin your journey." Applause broke out. People turned toward the main doors. Phones were lifted, ready to capture the grand moment. But nothing happened. No valet, no vehicle, no bow. Just silence. Drop a comment with where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you're already hooked. The applause faded awkwardly. The MC looked off stage. Claire's father stood slowly, checking his phone. Then he stepped aside with the hotel manager, their voices hushed but tense. Claire glanced at Ethan. He was expressionless. Still. Almost too calm. Her pulse quickened. When her father returned, his face was stony. He walked right up to Ethan and asked, quietly but clearly, "Did you cancel the car?" The air shifted. Claire could feel the weight of 100 eyes turning toward them. Her breath caught in her throat. Ethan didn't answer right away. He just looked at her father, then at Claire, and said softly, "It wasn't the right time. I'll explain everything." Back in the ballroom, confusion had turned into murmurs. Guests whispered. Claire's mother looked mortified. Her father, furious. Claire could feel the ground shifting beneath her heels. And in that moment, under all that pressure, one question echoed inside her. What could possibly matter more than the truth on your wedding day? Claire stood motionless, the applause long gone, replaced by an uneasy murmur rolling through the hall like a tide she couldn't stop. She could feel every glance, some curious, some pitying, others sharpening into judgment. Her mother sat stiffly at the family table, lips pressed tight, trying to maintain composure. Her father, still standing near Ethan, looked as if he was holding back a storm with every muscle in his jaw. Ethan hadn't said another word. He simply stood there, his hands folded in front of him, his expression unreadable. Claire wanted to believe there was an explanation. Some harmless reason the car wasn't there. A misunderstanding. A delay. But the way Ethan had said, "It wasn't the right time," didn't sound like someone caught off guard. It sounded deliberate. It sounded like a decision he had made alone. She looked at him now, really looked. The tuxedo, the boutonniere, the ring already on his finger. All still perfect. But the man inside the suit, he seemed distant, locked behind a quiet wall she hadn't known existed until that moment. Her father turned toward her. "Claire, do you want me to handle this privately?" It wasn't just a question. It was a challenge. He was giving her the choice. Stand beside Ethan or step away. Claire hesitated. Then she took Ethan's hand, not out of solidarity, but out of necessity. She needed answers. She leaned in, her voice low. What's going on, Ethan? Please, tell me now. He looked at her, eyes soft but heavy. I promise I'll explain, just not here. Her chest tightened. That wasn't enough. Not today. Not when the gift her parents had poured their hearts into, the gesture that was supposed to unify their families, had become a mystery hanging in the air like fog. She pulled her hand back. Guests began to shift uncomfortably in their seats. The MC quietly stepped off stage. Waiters awkwardly moved between tables, pretending not to notice the tension in the room. Somewhere near the back, a child whispered, "Mommy, why is everyone so quiet?" Claire's face burned. She walked off the stage, past her mother's pale face, past her friend's concerned stares. Behind her, Ethan didn't follow. She stepped outside the ballroom and into the hallway, heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. The air was cooler out here, quieter, but not enough. Not nearly enough to silence the hum inside her chest. She didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, she stood by the window, staring at the streetlights flickering in the parking lot. She imagined the car that wasn't there. She imagined Ethan driving it, or canceling it, or giving it away. And for what? She didn't know. All she knew was that this wasn't just about a car. It was about something he hadn't trusted her with, something he'd decided alone on their wedding day. Behind her, the door opened. She didn't turn. It was her mother. "Claire," Helen said gently, "come back inside. People are asking questions." Claire shook her head. "Let them ask." Her mother stepped beside her, touched her arm. "Do you trust him?" Claire didn't answer. Because in that moment, she didn't know. Claire didn't go back into the ballroom. She stood by the window long enough for the music to restart, for laughter to awkwardly resume, for the whole event to carry on. Without her. She could imagine it now. The waiters pushing forward with dessert, her father trying to save face, her bridesmaids throwing each other nervous glances, pretending this was just a moment. But it wasn't just a moment. It was the crack that let everything leak out. She turned when she heard footsteps behind her. This time it wasn't her mother. It was Ethan. He didn't speak right away. His tie was loosened. His expression was calm. Too calm. "You okay?" he asked softly. She stared at him, astonished. Was that really the question he chose? "Do I look okay?" Her voice was sharper than she intended, but she didn't care. He winced slightly but said nothing. "Ethan," she said, stepping closer, "my father just accused you of canceling a wedding gift in front of 150 guests, and you didn't deny it. You didn't even flinch." He looked away. "Because he wasn't wrong." Claire's breath hitched. "So you did cancel it." He nodded once. Slow. Measured. "I did." The silence between them pulsed like a second heartbeat. "Why?" "It's complicated." That word, that infuriating, useless, vague word. Claire felt heat rise in her chest. "Try me," she said coldly. "We're married now. Complicated is part of the deal." He looked at her then, really looked, and something flickered in his eyes. Pain, regret, hesitation, but not explanation. "You'll understand soon, just not here? Not yet." She took a step back, her heels clicking like a verdict. "You've said that already, at the altar, at the gift reveal, and now, 3 times. You've had 3 chances." His shoulders dropped, but he didn't argue. Didn't beg. Just stood there, absorbing her anger like he thought he deserved it. That, more than anything, made her furious. Claire crossed her arms, holding herself together. "Do you know what this feels like? It's not about the car, Ethan. It never was. It's the fact that something important happened, Something big enough to make you cancel a gift from my parents on our wedding day. And you didn't think I deserved to know." He opened his mouth, closed it again. Silent. That was her answer. She turned away. "I need time," she said. "Claire." "No," she said firmly, not looking back. "Don't follow me." She walked toward the elevator, her veil swaying behind her like the tail end of something broken. As the doors closed, she saw Ethan through the narrow slit, still standing in the same place, unmoving. Claire didn't go home. She didn't go to the hotel suite either. She called a car, gave the driver her parents' address, and leaned her forehead against the cool glass window. The city passed by in blurs of orange light and fading music. She felt empty and full at the same time, filled with questions, but hollow in trust. What had he done? And why did he think she couldn't know? Claire spent the night in her childhood bedroom, sitting upright on the bed in a silk wedding dress she no longer wanted to be in. The house was silent. Her parents hadn't said much since she walked in. Her mother had only asked, "Are you staying here tonight?" And Claire had nodded. No one asked why she was alone. They didn't have to. She changed into sweatpants sometime past midnight and stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours. Then she got up, grabbed her laptop, and opened Ethan's shared cloud folder. He rarely hid things from her. At least she thought he didn't. But tonight had changed the rules. Tonight, she didn't want to wait for him to tell her when it was the right time. She searched keywords: car purchase, wedding, transfer, contract. At 2:14 a.m., she found a PDF file tucked inside a folder named Final Registry, Claire. It was a scanned document, a cancellation form signed by Ethan Miller, dated 3 days before the wedding. Recipient, Whitestone Medical Fund. Memo line, Judith Bennett, hospice allocation. Claire's breath caught. She didn't know a Judith Bennett. She'd never heard that name. And hospice? She searched the name. Nothing useful. Then she checked Ethan's email. She hesitated. Violating privacy wasn't who she was, but tonight she didn't recognize who she was either. There it was. A confirmation email from Saint, Amelia's assisted care, time-stamped 2 days before the ceremony. Subject line: Donation received. Room 12 be secured for Mrs. Judith Bennett. Claire sat back in the chair, heart pounding. He had taken the money for the car and used it to help someone dying. But who was she? And why had he never mentioned her? By sunrise, Claire was already in a cab, staring out the window as the suburbs rolled past. She hadn't told her parents where she was going. She hadn't told Ethan either. She turned her phone off. St. Amelia's assisted care was a modest building. White brick, ivy crawling up one side, a little outdated but clean and quiet. The woman at the reception desk blinked in confusion when Claire asked about room 12B. "Are you family?" Claire paused, then shook her head. "Number, but I need to speak with her." The receptionist made a call, then nodded toward the hallway. "She's awake. A bit tired, but she might like the company." Room 12B smelled faintly of lavender and old linen. A nurse was adjusting an IV line beside the bed. The woman lying under the covers looked fragile, her gray hair pulled back, her skin papery and pale. But her eyes, sharp, alert, turned toward Claire the moment she entered. "You're not my nurse," the woman said, her voice gravelly but warm. "No," Claire replied, stepping inside. "I'm Claire Miller." The woman blinked, then her lips pulled into the faintest smile. "Ethan's girl." It wasn't a question. It was a fact. Claire's throat tightened. "You know him?" The woman nodded slowly. "I saved his life." Once she gestured to the chair beside the bed. "Sit down. I think we both need to talk." Claire sat quietly beside the hospital bed, fingers clenched lightly in her lap, the sun from the window drawing long golden lines across the sterile white tile. Judith Bennett took a breath, like it was borrowed time. "He was 19, she said, voice barely more than a whisper. "I was on the road to see my sister that night. It was raining like hell, and I almost missed him." She chuckled once, dry and distant. His bike was twisted like a corkscrew. He was bleeding out on the shoulder, couldn't move. There were other cars, but they kept driving. Maybe they were scared. Maybe they just didn't care. Claire didn't speak. Judith looked at her with eyes far younger than her face. "I pulled over, called 911, stayed with him, held his hand, told him he'd be okay. I was wearing my blue raincoat that night. Funny thing is, he remembered the color. Not my face, not my voice, just the coat." She let that sit for a moment, then continued. "I didn't leave my name. Didn't think he'd remember me anyway. I just told the nurse to tell him, 'Do something good with your life.' That was it. Then I left." Claire felt something crack in her chest. She could see it now, Ethan, terrified and broken on the side of the road, and this stranger kneeling beside him, shielding him from the storm. "Years later," Judith said, "he found me. I don't even know how. Said he'd been looking ever since. Showed up at the door of my little apartment, holding that same damn blue coat." Her lips curled up, remembering. "He cried. And I hadn't seen a man cry like that in years." Claire bit the inside of her cheek, blinking fast. "He wanted to repay me. I told him no, told him that moment was nothing, just something human. But then last month..." Judith's voice weakened, faltered. "The doctor said it had spread, liver, lungs, nothing they could do." She glanced at the IV line. "Hospice was the only option. Government wait lists were months long. I had no one, no children, no insurance, just me, a few boxes, and bad news." Her eyes met Claire's again, clear, unwavering. "Ethan found out, didn't ask, didn't make a speech, just paid for everything. The room, the care. He didn't want people to know. Not even you. Said it would cheapen the reason." Claire's heart twisted. All the arguments, the confusion, the silence, and now this. She felt both humbled and ashamed for doubting, but also hurt for being left out, for not being trusted with the truth. "He could have told me," Claire said softly. "Why didn't he?" Judith studied her, her smile fading. "Because some debts aren't meant to be shared. Some people carry their gratitude like a sacred thing. And sometimes, love means protecting people from the weight of it." Claire lowered her eyes. She didn't know what to say. What could she say? She stayed a while longer. Judith dozed off, her breathing even. When Claire finally stood to leave, she took a last look at the room. It was small, but peaceful. Warm. She walked out slowly, past the nurse's station, past the ivy-covered walls, back into the gray-blue light of late morning. The world hadn't changed. But she had. Claire hadn't planned on seeing Ethan again so soon. But 3 days after she left the hospice, her mother told her they were hosting a small post-wedding brunch with close relatives, and insisted she attend, even just for formality. She agreed. Not because she wanted to face him, but because something inside her needed to stand in that space again. Not as a bride, not as a runaway, but as someone who now knew the weight Ethan had been carrying in silence. The brunch was quieter than expected. The laughter was forced. Conversations were brief. Her father stood near the back garden, arms crossed, saying little. Ethan was there, alone. He didn't try to approach her, only glanced her way once. That look said everything. "If you're ready, I'm here. If not, I'll wait." She wasn't sure what she was ready for. Midway through the meal, a young man appeared at the gate. He wasn't dressed for the occasion. Faded jeans, a tucked-in shirt, and sneakers coated in dust. He looked no older than 25, eyes sharp but weary. In his hands was a small blue folder. He scanned the crowd, then locked eyes with Ethan. Claire turned, watching Ethan go completely still. The young man walked forward. The hush that fell over the guests wasn't instant. It spread slowly, like ripples after a stone. The young man reached the center and cleared his throat. "Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, but I think something needs to be said." Claire's heart stopped. She didn't know him, but something about him, the voice, the urgency, felt connected. The young man looked at her, then at her parents. "My name is Noah Bennett. My mother is Judith Bennett. Some of you might not know who that is, but I think you all know Ethan Miller." He paused. "A few nights ago, at the wedding, there was a lot of confusion. About a car that didn't show up, about a gift that was promised, and about a man who stood silent in front of all of you." Murmurs started again. Her father stiffened. "You see," Noah continued, voice clear now, "Ethan didn't cancel the car out of selfishness. He didn't refuse your generosity. He redirected it." He held up the folder and opened it. "This is the hospice bill that Ethan paid in full, for a woman who once saved his life. A woman who stood by his side after a crash when no one else did. That woman was my mother." Gasps. Claire saw her mother press a hand to her lips. She never asked for anything in return, but Ethan found her. And when he discovered she was dying and couldn't afford care, he chose to do something that many people wouldn't. He gave up his wedding gift, your gift, to make sure she didn't die alone. Or in pain. Noah turned to Richard Dawson, Claire's father. "Sir, I know your pride was hurt. I know your intentions were good, but so were his, maybe greater." Richard didn't move. Noah softened. "He didn't tell anyone because he wasn't looking for praise. He was honoring a promise, a life." Then he looked to Claire. "He also didn't tell you because he thought your day should be about joy, not death, not debt, not the past." Silence. Complete, crushing silence. And then a slow, single clap. Helen Dawson, Claire's mother, eyes glistening, then another, then more. Within seconds, the room was filled with applause, not the polite kind, but something deeper, a recognition, a release. Ethan didn't speak. He didn't need to. Claire stood there, overwhelmed. She felt the walls she'd built over the last few days crumble with every breath. She crossed the room. He met her halfway. They didn't embrace. Not right away. They just looked at each other. Truly, painfully, honestly. And when she finally spoke, her voice was soft. "You should have told me." "I know," he whispered. "I didn't know how." "You didn't have to know how," she said. "You just had to trust me." He lowered his eyes. "Do you still want to try?" Claire didn't answer with words. She simply took his hand and didn't let go. The brunch ended quietly. No one played music, no one gave speeches, but something unspoken lingered in the air. Respect. Not the kind that comes from prestige or power, but the kind earned in silence, sacrifice, and small, unseen decisions. Claire's father didn't say much as guests began to leave. But before Ethan stepped out of the garden, Richard stopped him with a firm hand on the shoulder. "Next time," he said gruffly, "tell us. We're not your enemy." Ethan nodded. That was enough. The next week, Claire and Ethan canceled the honeymoon, not because they didn't want it, but because they needed something else more, space to rebuild. They stayed at a small cabin 2 hours from the city. No Wi-Fi, no schedules, just time. There, in the quiet mornings and long walks by the lake, they talked. About her doubts, about his fear, about the difference between love and control, about how even the purest actions can feel like betrayal when wrapped in silence. Ethan apologized. Not just for hiding the truth, but for assuming that Claire needed protection more than partnership. And Claire forgave him. Not because what he did was perfect, but because what he did came from the kind of heart that doesn't need to be right to do what's good. Months passed. Judith Bennett passed away peacefully in her sleep, a blanket of quiet covering her final days. Ethan attended the funeral with Claire beside him. Noah stood between them and gave the eulogy. He mentioned the crash, the rain, the coat, but mostly he spoke of what people become when someone believes in them. After the service, Noah handed Ethan a small envelope. Inside was a photo, a grainy old picture of Judith in a blue raincoat, smiling beside a rusted pickup truck. On the back, just one line in shaky handwriting. Do good, even when no one's watching. A year later, Ethan and Claire bought a car together. Not new, not fancy, just theirs. They drove it cross-country, no GPS, no music, just the hum of the engine and the trust that this time everything was out in the open. And now, if you're wondering who I am, I'm Claire. Yes, the girl in the white dress whose wedding started with whispers and ended with applause. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Love isn't about perfection or getting every moment right. It's about what you do when the cameras are off, when no one's watching, when the choice to be kind costs you something. That's what Ethan showed me. And I'll never forget the day the car didn't come. Because sometimes, the gift that doesn't arrive is the one that truly changes everything.